Hey guys, I'm Kimothy and I'm a 1550 plus Deathblade, specifically Surge in the Korean servers. This means I've played all the way until Hard Abral Shoot phases 1 and 2, and I play both on the NA and Korean versions. Now on both servers I main Surge Deathblade, and playing on NA has made me realize that people are still learning and adapting to the playstyle of this class. So that's why I wanted to help out as best as I can and make a quick, if not an in-depth guide on the playstyle of Surge Deathblade. So why Surge Deathblade? Well, it has super high burst damage, the class itself is really mobile, and Surge Deathblade is extremely rewarding when pulled off. However, the cons is its high skill ceiling and difficulty. It's adapting to 14 versus 20 stacks depending on boss patterns, for example. It's a natural back attack chaser, and not critting your Surge makes you want to quit the game. So now I'm going to talk about my engravings real quick. So I run a 5x3+1 setup, and it's Grudge, Sharp Blunt, Cursed Dole, Master of Ambush, Surge, followed by 1 on Adrenaline. But catering towards NA players, I'm just going to describe how I would start off by going a 3x3, 4x3, 5x3. So for a 3x3, I would run a 3 Grudge, 3 Master of Ambush, 2 Adrenaline for the crit rate, and 1 Surge. For 4x3, I would run Grudge, Adrenaline, Surge, and Master of Ambush. Then doing a 5x3, which will last you a long time, I would run a Grudge 3, Cursed Dole 3, Master of Ambush 3, Surge 3, and Adrenaline 3. I only recently added Sharp Blunt here because I finally have enough crit rate where this would be really cost efficient. So now I'm going to quickly talk about the skill choices, the skill tree, and the skill runes that accompany said skills. So I'm going to start in order that you see below down here from my Q to F. And my first skill is going to be Blitz Rush. I run the crit rate, I run Enhanced Charge, and I run Shadow Rush. Now I accompany this skill with a legendary Gale rune so I can get it done faster. And this is probably your highest DPS basic ability. That's why I think it's quite important to have this skill maxed out first. Secondly, I run Dark Axle, and now Dark Axle is a mobility skill, and I run the attack rate, tenacity, and high axle so I can jump over bosses. This is really great for repositioning yourself or stacking up and then just quickly jumping behind the boss and then using your Surge ability. Next, I'm going to be using Wind Cutter, and now Wind Cutter is your party synergy, which gives head and back attack, and I run the tripods that enhance this, and also the cooldown reduction, and finally triple spin, so I can get 3 instead of 2 stacks. I also use a blue Gale rune on this ability. The next is going to be my counter. Now my counter, I run Push, Weakness Detection, and Earth Strike. I could be wrong on the name of this, but these are the tripods that I do use, and I use the Enhanced Stagger rune that gives me 30% extra. Next, I'm going to be using Surge Deathblade's bread and butter skill, which is Wind Cut right here. And now Wind Cut, I accompany this with a Bleed rune. So I run the cooldown reduction, Enhanced Duration, and I run the tripod at the last level here, which actually increases the radius of this ability. So now talking about this really quickly, this tripod expands it and gives you 4 stacks during the Surge state. But if you change it to this tripod, which is the detonation one, it actually gives you 5 stacks. But the difference is that the radius is very small. So if the boss starts moving around, even though it has 5 stacks, you might not really get any at all. So this is personal preference, but I run the enhanced radius. Next, which is going to be my S, it's your second highest normal damaging ability, and it's going to be Soul Absorber. I run the attack rate, I run Fist of Darkness, and I run Half Cut. These are the basic tripods for this ability, and I also run the purple Gale rune for this. My second last skill is going to be Maelstrom. I run 7 points into this, which gives me orb generation and dark order, which actually helps my party members, also myself, while also giving myself more bubble generation, which is really, really great. And I run a blue gale rune on this. There's no point increasing this above 7. Next, and my last ability, is going to be Void Strike. Now Void Strike, I run the legendary Wealth rune, but if you don't have it, obviously run a purple or a lesser one that you do have. Now for this skill, I run the orb generation. I run the one that leaves a pool after you use it, just so I can get more stacks. And then I'm gonna run Black Dimension over here. Now regarding Black Dimension and Black Explosion, I'm gonna talk about it later on in the video, but for now, just know that these are the tripods that I do run for these. And lastly, I just want to mention on the Moonlight Sonic ability, in case you guys prefer to use that one, the tripods that I would use is Fist of Darkness, Sustain, and Shade Sonic. So these 3 are the ones that I would use, and I would not use a Gale rune for this one because it would only give you 2 stacks instead of 3, so I would use something else such as reducing the mana costs. So I want to put a quick point here about the skills that you can swap out. Now the only skill that you should swap out, in my opinion, is Void Strike for Moonlight Sonic. I think that you should keep the other damage abilities, Blitz Rush and Soul Absorber. So I'm going to talk about the differences, and then you guys can decide on your own if you want to use one or the other. But me personally, I don't use Moonlight Sonic, I use Void Strike. So let's start off with Void Strike. Void Strike, first, it gives you more orb generation. Second, it is used more commonly in the 14 stack cycle that will be discussed later on, but the damage is lesser than that of Moonlight Sonic. So Moonlight Sonic only gives you 3 stacks. It has lesser orb generation, but it can be used from a bit further range than Void Strike. Comparing that. So you can hit the boss on the outer edge of Moonlight Sonic. But Void Strike you might actually end up missing in some scenarios. So ultimately it's up to preference, but as a rule of thumb, I would suggest Void Strike for 14 stack cycles, and Void Strike again for 20 stack cycles, or Moonlight Sonic for 20 stack cycles for a little bit more DPS. So going in order of importance, I would recommend that you guys finish these 3 tripods first. This one gives crit rate, this one gives an enhanced charge, and this one just shoots out the damage skill by itself. The second one you want to finish off is Soul Absorber, which is faster attack rate, Dark Injection, and I think it's called Half Cut. So you want to finish these 3, followed by these 3. After that, you want to focus on your Wind Cut tripods. You want to finish off the cooldown reduction for this and the enhanced timer, but focus on the cooldown reduction first, followed by the cooldown reduction of the Spin Cutter, and then you want to increase your Void Strike's orb gauge so that the 14 stack cycle is possible as well. Followed by that, you also want to increase the orb generation from your Maelstrom, and also give this, because you know, you want to give out a party buff, an enhanced party buff, sorry, to your party mates. And then finally, then you want to focus on the attack speed of Dark Axle, and then your counter ability. Now I've mentioned this in the order of importance for myself, so I'm just going to repeat again. I think the first one you should finish is Blitz Rush, Soul Absorber, Wind Cut, Spin Cutter, Void Strike, Maelstrom, followed by Dark Axle, and then lastly your counter. Now, like I've said, you only need around 15 tripods to completely finish this build. But in case I ever want to swap into Moonlight Sonic, I also have the tripods for these ready as well. Hey guys, so I'm quickly going to explain about my set bonus along with my combat stats itself. So right now I am running Abral Shoot Gear Death Set, which does gives me 20% crit chance from hitting bosses or monsters from the back. But I want to mention the accessories part. So now the accessories, I'm running full specialization along with a spec plus crit necklace. And I do this so that I can maximize out my specialization, which gives me the, surge damage. And I know in NA, you guys don't have access to these sets or these level of combat stats. So I'm just gonna assume that in NA, we currently have a 550 crit combat stat. Now that roughly equates to about a 20% crit chance. Now, if you're hitting a boss from the back, you immediately get 10% crit chance. So adding this and my combat stats, I will roughly have a 30% crit chance. But if you're running Adrenaline 3, you're actually getting 15% crit chance, which gives you a total of 45% crit chance. Now, a party member crit synergy buff gives you at least 10% crit chance, which leaves you at 55% crit chance. And then, once you get access to these set bonuses, you will actually have a 75% crit chance when you're hitting a boss from the back. That's why I actually run full specialization, because full specialization gives me more orb generation and more surge damage. Now, if you're gonna be like, oh, but Kimothy, I'm still not critting enough. Well, you can actually end up changing one ring into a crit ring from a spec ring. But that will actually mean that you lose some surge damage, and I don't recommend that at all. Trust me, I think the crit rate is gonna be enough. So I'm gonna talk about gems real quick, and regarding the gems, you need 8 cooldown reduction ones for each of your basic abilities. And then you need 3 damage ones, and the 3 are gonna be Surge, Blitz, and then the last one is gonna be optional. So the last one, you can choose between Soul Absorber or Moonlight Sonic. But personally, I find that Soul Absorber has a higher DPS, so I've gone with that one. Regarding the level of the gems though, as a rule of thumb, you want your damage gems to be 2 levels above your cooldown reduction one. So for, let's say in NA, right now I would be using level 3 cooldown gems followed by level 5 gems for my damage. And then ideally you want your burst to be the highest level that you do have as well. I'm gonna compare the 14 stack cycle versus the 20 stack cycle. And so the pros of 14 stacks is that you get more surges during a fight, it's more practical, and overall throughout the whole fight you input a bit more damage. Now the cons of this is that if you miss Void Strike after using your surge ability, you have to use your other abilities to fill up the 3 bubbles again, or the cooldown reduction buff from activating 2 bubbles might not be enough to continue the 14 cycle surge. Another con is that it requires the Wealth Rune of at least purple or legendary rarity for the Void Strike to fill up 1 whole bubble. Now the pros of 20 stacks is that it is the one-shot feeling. It is, you stack it all the way up so you get the maximum damage and then you use your surge. However, the cons is that it takes longer to stack up. So pretty much I would recommend that if you are just beginning to use surge, start with 20 stacks so you have the freedom to move around and stack up until you are more familiar with the boss's patterns. And then once you are comfortable, then you can transition into the 14 stack cycle, or until you get the Wealth Rune of the rarities mentioned. Hey guys, so now I'm going to show you a 14 stack cycle of how to use this build. So you're going to start off by using your identity into a spin cutter, followed by a wind cut, and then a blitz rush, mail, soul absorber, back into a wind cut, and then use your surge, back into a void strike, and you should end up with 3 bubbles. And now I'll just show you a 14 stack cycle by replacing soul absorber with Moonlight instead. So now I'm going to show you 3 rotations of this 14 stack cycle just to show you what it looks like ideally. I also want to mention that the 14 stack cycle can actually be done by swapping out Void and Soul Absorber as well. For example, like this. And you would still end up back at 3 bubbles, but the reason why we actually, or well, why I don't actually do this is because Soul Absorber does more damage than Void Strike, so I think that it's better to use Soul Absorber during the Identity stance phase where you actually get more attack damage. So for the ones that want to adopt a more 20 stack full cycle surge playstyle, I'm going to show you a quick example. And then finally a 20 stack Moonlight. So I just want to give my closing thoughts here, and in the background is a video of Handgunner and I duo bossing Argos in Korea until phase 3. And in this section, I want to talk about Remaining Energy versus Surge. Now, Remaining Energy has high damage output, don't get me wrong. It's a more consistent playstyle, but it doesn't offer the damage that Surge can. And so Surge is a playstyle that will give you results depending on the player. If 2 players with an average skill set played Surge and Remaining Energy, it's possible that Remaining Energy does more DPS than Surge. But if 2 experienced or super skilled players played both, Remaining Energy can still match the damage output of Surge, but Surge definitely has the ability to take over Remaining Energy. And to kind of illustrate this, I drew a paint graph, and as you can see, it's a DPS versus time chart with Surge and Remaining Energy in red and blue respectively. And what it shows is the damage output of experienced players. And the peaks of the red are obviously the Surge damage, assuming that it hits the boss. And the little intervals in between is the stacking period as outlined by the black dotted lines. What makes Surge better than Remaining Energy is that if a player can actually minimize the stacking time and continuously output Surge, they will actually do more DPS than Remaining Energy and a lot of other classes. So Surge is an extremely skill set dependent player, because if you are taking too long and utilizing the 3 whole bubble time period to use your 20 stack Surge, then obviously your DPS won't be as high compared to Remaining Energy or other classes. But that's why right now I think Surge is better than Remaining Energy, because people are getting better and the stacking period is getting shorter and shorter. Especially with the 14 stack cycle that we have figured out, we are able to output more and more Surge damage. So that is kind of, well, this paint graph kind of encapsulates my idea on the whole Surge versus Remaining Energy. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this guide video. If you guys have any more questions, I would say ask them on my Twitch, but I am taking a little break as of now. So feel free to leave any comments down below and I will try and get to them when I can. And for now, I'll see you on the next one. Thank you guys so much.